I need more mana.
That's a lot of damage!
Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, hunters and exiles, I guess. Wanted to wrap up this build before Elden Ring came out, so I'm kind of glad I essentially got it done, and I just wanted to share it a bit. So a bit of background while I show you some map clearing and some bossing footage, but basically after doing Absolution this league, I wanted to try a different minion build, because I love minion builds, but also hate playing super meta minion builds like Skelly Mages right now, since they're typically really expensive to gear, and I'm just a special little snowflake, so I gotta do my own thing. So I went way out of my league to make an original build, which was the Zombie Bomber using Minion Instability, Ashes of the Stars, and Phantasmal Zombies. If you want to check it out, it'll be in the description, but long story short, it didn't work out. While not as clunky as usual, it still felt really bad to play. I figured there would be some way to improve it, but I had no idea, and a few people had reached out to me to discuss the build, and I'm really grateful for the help, but we really couldn't get it to feel good enough to use. So I do hope some streamers pick up that super thing, because zombie bombs is like my PoE fantasy at this point, and I would love to see it done. I just can't do it. So I felt rather defeated after spending all my currency to make my own build and failing, and I didn't really know what to do. Definitely not leveling a 5th character and going through the axe, that's for sure. So while I was looking at refining the Zombie Bomber build, I wondered what I could abuse with Ashes of the Star, and then I discovered Stone Golems. Now, Stone Golem Bomber is not an original idea for sure. It's been around since they reworked the Elementalist to revive Golems back in like Delirium or something. And I played it back when Vex's Maw of Mischief first came out in Heist, and it was really bad just then. It was far too clunky to work out. Maybe because I was in solo self-found at the time, I just could not get that thing to work. But now with the recent updates, it got buffed. Multiple buffs actually. So back in 3.16, we got the Ignite changes to make Ignite way beefier, so that's a plus. But then this league, we also got the self-cast changes, which Deathwish specifically got like a 50% base damage buff, and it got 6% more scaling off minion HP, which is really sweet. So this is sort of counterproductive since Ignite also got nerfed this patch. I really don't know what the idea was behind buffing and nerfing a lot of the caster stuff in the same patch. Anyway, long story short, Ignite is good. So since my Zombie Bomber build kind of, was already a thing, I spent the 120 regrets I needed to move my tree and ascendancy around to Elementalist and decided to go Stone Golem Bomber. And goddamn, I wish I had done so sooner. It is so flippin' good to play now. Look, full transparency, it's not the fastest mapper, it's not the fastest bosser, it's not the most defensively stable tank around, but for the budget, it is solid across the board. It's pretty respectable. The defenses work. I know the life is a bit low, but it's super cheap to get this thing going, like I said. I think I spent less than an Exalt originally to get this thing up and running, which is great since I lost all my money working on the Zombie Bomber. So enough of the preamble, let me just discuss the Stone Golem Bomber, which I will now refer to as the Globber, Golem Globber. I have two setups for this build. One is Fire and the other is Chaos Conversion. I'm going to focus on the Chaos one. It's not really conversion, but Chaos Ignite. We're going to be focusing on that because that's kind of what I have all my, tree set up to right now. Anyway, let's start with the basics, which is just the playstyle and the gems so you can see what we're working with. Obviously, the build revolves around the Maw of Mischief helmet, which is using Death Wish to suicide our golems, and honestly, that's the whole build. We're going to be using Elementalist for the obvious reason. Liege with the Primordial lets our golems revive themselves after we complode them. We don't need to pick up the Elemancer, to be honest, because one more golem is not going to really change much. We will pick up Shaper of Flames, so we always ignite, and we boost our fire exposure with Mastermind of Discord. However, I will note in here that since we're Chaos Conversion, we don't need this anymore. We went for the Elemental Aegis instead, but for fire option, you definitely want to go down that side. And then you have two other options. You can go for Heart of Destruction, which gives you better clearing and better boss damage, or you can go with Shaper of Storm for shocks and spreading shocks, which I will get to in a second, but that's basically just the ascendancy there. So for Death Wish itself, I'm going to be running it linked to Infused Channeling for some defense and offense, since we're going to be using this skill all the time. We're also going to have Burning Damage and Unbound Ailments since we're scaling Ignites. This is an Ignite build, and we're doing Cruelty for the initial big hits. We want to scale our minions' life as much as possible, which is why we're going to be linking Empower and Enhance to our Stone Golems, and why we're abusing Ashes of the Stars. This gives a fat amount of HP to our golems. Mine are currently sitting at 171k, which is a lot more than my zombies were doing. We also run Herald of Purity, which spawns sentinels, as we can explode those as well. They're not nearly as strong as stone golems, but they do help make clearing feel a lot better, as they will basically always be up and we have something that we can explode as we're waiting for our golems to respawn. Literally everything else in this build is just supporting this little core though. Starting with our skeleton link on our weapon. It's a random spell echo and skeletons. It seems weird, I know, especially because it's not on trigger craft or anything. But the skeletons are literally just fodder. See, Deathwish scales its damage and more importantly its ailment damage based on the amount of minions it affects to a maximum of 13, which would grant 130% more damage with hits and ailments, which is huge. It's fat. So Spell Echo Skeletons drops 8 skeletons really fast, so I can catch those up with the 4 golems or sentinels and just make really big explosions like initially. It's really nice there. That's the only reason why we have it though. Other than the skeletons, the rest is basic. It's just your auras, so Determination, Defiance Banner, Herald of Purity, and Tempest Shield, basically a must. And then for the Chaos version, which is what I'm running, I also have Discipline and Malevolence. For the Fire version, I run like Skitter Bots and a better Herald, but yeah. I have my auras linked to level 3 Enlightens because I'm too cheap for level 4s. And the other things I have scattered about is just basically where I could fit them. I have Despair Curse, Convoke, Molten Shell, and Withering Step just kind of like in the shields and other pieces. Alright, so let me talk about the gear choices really quick. Weapon, it's a weird one. Minion life and damage, which is both good for us since we're using spiritual aid, so their damage is our damage. Physical spells helps Golem and Herald of Purity, and Fire Dot Multi, because we ignite immune if we're converting it to chaos, it still gets scaled off Fire Dot Multi. I could use a +2 weapon here, but again, too expensive for me. But this thing cost me like 35 chaos, so you can probably craft your own, but it's super cheap. Helmet is the helmet, can't change it. It costs 1 chaos, go for it. Chest piece, we're using Skin of the Lords, cost me 30c. Its +2 gems is crazy for us because it will buff our Empower and our Enhance and feed Stone Golems even more. Because of this, we can also put our Despair Curse in here, which also gets super fat off the extra levels and quality. Now mine came with Call to Arms, which is kind of interesting because it allows me to use War Cries instantly, so I kind of thought it'd be cool to have Enduring Cry in here as well. But it's getting a little rough to hold all these buttons. Like I have to hold Withering Step, Molten Shell, and Enduring Cry now, and still have room to push Convoke. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this, but it's just what I have. We're also using this armor because global defense modifier is great for discipline and determination. The shield's a toss-up. I'm using Aegis Aurora because everyone is. It's a super OP and the whole armor stacking meta is ridiculous. But you can run Magnus Eclipse as well, which will save you your Ascendancy passives and you can run down there and grab something else. The rings, non-negotiable. We're going to be using Black Flame to turn all our Fire Ignites into Chaos Ignites, which is the entire point of this thing. And then we're going to be using Barracks or Spite to proliferate our Ignites to everything, which is going to be our clear speed. Now, if we're using Shaper of Storms on the Ascendancy, we can also proliferate our Shocks with our Ignites, which is super cool and a good reason to use that over Heart of Destruction, but I'm pretty sure Heart of Destruction is much better for bossing, as it's just a nice 30% more multiplier once you hit the boss. Now, gloves, belts, and boots, pretty standard, resistance, stats, life fix, nothing special here. However, you do want to use the new Eldritch Implicits. The gloves can roll Fire Dot Multi for the Searing Exarch and Fire Exposure on hit for the Eater of Worlds, if you're running fire. Boots can get Ignite Steel damage faster, but if you're running Black Flame, it's already cut in half, it's probably not all that helpful. Fire build though, for sure. Now here's the passive tree. There's really not much standoutish here, to be honest. It's pretty basic stuff from like, a minion builds perspective. You're grabbing your minion stuff, your dot multi nodes, and we're going to run down to Glancing Blows. Glancing Blows is great because we can heal it off with Aegis Aurora, and I also have a Red Nightmare down here in the shield corner that gets all this res from the shield cluster converted into more block and endurance charge on kill, which helps our survivability. And then I have Thread of Hope to snag Golem Commander, Arcane Will, Breath of the Flames, and Cruel Preparation. All great nodes, it saves me a ton of passives, you definitely want to pick that up. I'm running 2 Cluster Jewels here, but they're not mandatory. I just have them to grab Primordial Bond, and so I have the extra jewel slots so I can fit in a Watcher's Eye. I'm also running a Reservation Small Cluster because I have mana issues, but you can get by without it, especially if you're running level 4 Enlightens, which is too much for me. Now, some of these clips of me are going to be running Fire version, which was much cheaper to get going than what I started with. It's a really easy conversion one way or the other, though. For the Fire version, you can scale Chaos Resistance and go Glorious Vanity to grab Divine Flesh, and then pick up Eldritch Battery to fix all your mana issues, since damage is going to bypass Energy Shield anyway at that point. And then you just pull off one of the Cluster Jewels with the Mana Reservation node. And since you're not going to be running Malevolence or Discipline anymore, you can just throw on, like, increased Chaos Res for your Divine Flesh. I also put on Skitterbots and put an Empower and Minion Life on Herald of Purity, and that was basically the swap between the two. I feel like the Chaos version is better for bossing, so I'm currently running that right now, but Fire felt much safer and more reliable for mapping. Granted, the main difference was that Black Flame Ring, but if you're just running Fire, you can go down that left side of the Ascendancy to pick up the extra exposure and the extra AoE. It does just feel better for mapping. And you do get a lot more HP since you actually can get HP on that ring. It did feel a bit safer since you don't have Energy Shield, but you can have like 4.5, 4.8k life, which is not terrible. Anyway, that's basically where I'm at right now. I'm pretty comfortable mapping everything without issues. I'm doing, T16 relatively juicy content, throwing in Sextants and Scarabs and stuff, and I'm killing pretty much every boss except the Feared, because I'm a bitch. Maven still killed me on the last memory game because, really, it's just a speed game and I'm not that fast, so there's like no way for me to do it quick enough. I'm not a speedy boy. But the fight otherwise was a breeze. Cirrus is a joke, and I did a deathless no time with like the Fire build when I had no gear. So the thing can boss, the thing can map, and it's pretty tanky, and this is really, really, really good. Ultimately, the build is really cheap. Aegis Aurora is the only kind of blockade, but again, that's not mandatory. I was using the Magnetic Clips until I got to like level 93. Fixing stats and resistances can be a little bit of a pain, but you have like 3 slots with Gloves, Boot, Belt to really get you held up there. But also the Eclipse Shield really helps, since when you have the bubble up, you get extra resistances, which is nice. I really wish I could have made the Zombie Bomber work out, but I'm really glad I went over here to play the Globber. That's gonna be weird to say, but yeah, Globber. I'm still saying the Globber. If I do play next league, I may do this build again, though. It depends on how expensive the Primordial Jewels are. Right now they're like 3 Chaos, they're free, so this build literally costs nothing to get going. Though I do expect there to be some shakeups, because right now the armor meta and Aegis Aurora is just way too dominant. So we never know what's really going to change. But anyway, that's all for me. Thank you all for watching, and good luck out there.